So, colleagues, and now I'm happy to introduce our next speaker. That will be provided by Gracy Crane, who is the International
Let me
Topic Lead,
introduce our next
RWD, International
speaker,
Regulatory Policy Team from Roche
Gracy
Pharmaceuticals.
Crane,
And
International
today,
Policy
we are hoping to
Topic
enjoy her
Lead
presentation,
for
Unlocking the
RWD
Future of
Roche.
Personalized Healthcare.
The
The
theme
floor
is
is yours. You're
Unlocking the
welcome.
Future of
Thank you.
Personalized
Can you hear
Healthcare.
me?
Thank you.
Positive, please proceed.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for this inviting me to speak at this meeting. And it's been fascinating listening to all of the speakers. So I've been learning a lot, and hopefully you'll find this presentation interesting as well. So just to give you a little bit of introduction to my work. So I've also worked as a real world data scientist. So I've run some of these studies. So it's a topic around data quality and data standards is really close to my heart. And at the moment, I'm working in the policy world. So hopefully, this presentation will cover both aspects of real world data. So this is just a quick introduction to the content of my talk. So I'm going to give you an introduction to what personalized healthcare means for Roche. And then we'll focus a little bit on real world data and real world evidence. I know a lot of the speakers who have gone before me have been talking a lot about it. So I won't go too much into it, but just to touch a little bit on it. And then we'll move into the applications of the real world data. And I think a lot of the speakers alluded to this, where they spoke about how important it is to get the real world data for decision making. And this is hopefully the applications that I have here will bring this to life a little bit, and then I'll conclude with a few final thoughts. Just to start off with what personalized healthcare actually means for Roche. Now, we believe that at Roche that it's about ensuring that the right treatment is available for the right patient at the right time. And we also believe that this is a pivotal moment in healthcare for us, because there's, if you like, there's a lot of convergence of a lot of medical knowledge, some very advanced technologies, and also data science. So when the three are converging together, we believe that there are insights that we're drawing out of this data, which we haven't been able to get before. And this is what we believe is going to revolutionize healthcare. But it's important that this just doesn't stay, if you like, as an ideal, but it needs to be able to deliver value, and it needs to be able to deliver value for everybody in society. So for patients, for industry, for payer bodies, and for regulators as well. And Roche's vision in this space really is to ensure that the screening and diagnosis, the treatment, and even prevention is all accelerated because of this type of data that's coming and available and can deliver value to all of us. And this is, if you like, a slide that we've created at Roche. We call this a self-reinforcing engine, but actually Professor Colbin also had a very similar slide as well. But let me talk you through this slide. So if we move from the left to the right, so we at Roche at the moment, we've got access to vast amounts of clinical trial data, and we also have real world data as well. And so this data now becomes off scale. So there is a lot of data that's available, and we have now advanced analytics tools where we can bring this clinical trial data and real world data together in a way that we hadn't been able to do so before. And because of this, by applying these advanced analytics, we generate insights that actually give us two main routes of using these types of data. One is, of course, smarter, more efficient R&D, which is useful to research organizations. But more importantly, it also helps to improve the access of medicines, to new medicines to patients, and also helping to personalize this care. And as we were hearing from the previous speaker, this whole problem of trying to identify adverse events, trying to identify which is the right population in order to be able to give the right treatment, all of these insights are helpful to us. And ultimately, the acquisition of companies like Flatiron and Foundation Medicine that Dr. Anya Shield referred to is actually helping to increase the amount of data that's available. And so the data then feeds right back into helping R&D and also improving patients, because this data needs to be at scale, or there needs to be a large amount of data available. And I'll demonstrate that in one of the studies that I will refer to. So this slide is a build, and just to say that, what is the key to this unlocking this transformation? As we heard from a number of different speakers, there's genomic data, there's digital data, there's also advanced imaging, and of course, there's real world data as well. But I think, and for this conference, we're focusing on real world data. But I think there are two additional dimensions to real world data that has made it really transformational. One is when you combine it with genomic data, and you can actually find information that is very deep and rich. For instance, the data that comes from a genomic test, like a test like FMI, it actually has 365 genes worth of data. So that is very rich and very deep data. It's not, it's not like a panel test where it's a couple of biomarkers, but these comprehensive genomic profiling tools allow you to get the rich data, which is around 300 genes. And the second is where companies like Flatiron are valuable, is because this data, this type of medical record data is linked with outcomes data, and so that gives the longitudinality that we find so valuable. So we're basically recreating patient journeys, and we're recreating it at an individual patient level. So the data becomes incredibly powerful in order to be able for us to draw insights. So we talked about real world data becoming real world evidence, and real world data just sits as a bunch of variables that you can collect. So you can collect so many different variables. You can collect clinical practice data, you can collect imaging data, but none of that actually is valuable unless you sort of analyze it in some way and you put it into a common data model. I think that was one of the other references. So there has to be some standards applied to get this data to the real world evidence point. And just, I think a lot of the speakers have referred to this, but just to let you know that there are a number of different data points that we get: the demographic data points, about the health status, lifestyle and behavior, and the data comes from traditional settings. So and it's exciting to hear how many Russian registries there are. So that's a really rich source of data. And then the non-traditional settings and the trial that you're actually running for COVID, which is using the mobile app that's collecting data from information. So this is becoming, vast amounts of data, and now we're able to access this. And here is the slide where I just want to talk about the fact that, in the next few slides, I'm actually going to talk about how this data can be used from a payer perspective, using an example, and again from a regulatory perspective as well. So let's dive straight into real world evidence for decision making. And over here, I just want to pause and I want to refer to Dr. Anya Shield's comment. And I really like to comment where she said, you need to select the question to answer, and then you need to find the right source of data. And it's not good to just go doing a real world data study because that's what you want to do. So it's really important to be able to understand the question that you're asking. And here, this is, if you like, the regulatory decision-making environment. And just to say that actually this is changing dramatically, as a number of speakers have mentioned. Now, on the left-hand side, there is a lot of engagement with health authorities. So, and they are in fact actually building capabilities very similar to the efforts that are ongoing in Russia at the moment that was mentioned previously. But also there are a number of agencies that are hosting workshops to educate themselves. So we have run workshops in Brazil for health authorities, and also in Singapore and Taiwan. So there's this ongoing effort to learn together with our stakeholders how real world data can be used. And then on the right-hand side, you can see that there has been a spike in real world data use in both the regulatory submissions and also to the HTA bodies as well. And it's a variety of different applications of real world data. So it's not just one, it's not just only for safety, but it's across the life cycle of a drug. And also internationally, there are efforts that are being made to build a consensus on real world data. So ICH is looking at this as a topic related to observational studies and pragmatic real world data study designs. And this, if you like, we've kind of stepped back in this slide and tried to give you a global view of the guidelines that are currently available. So there are a lot that are available at the moment, and there are a lot that are actually coming as well. But I just wanted to point out two really interesting sort of guidelines. One is actually the guideline that the way Health Canada is working. And in Health Canada, they're actually co-creating the real world evidence framework by working with the HTA body. So it's both the Health Canada and the HTA body coming together, very similar to the Norwegian example that was shared. And then the other piece, which is interesting, is how a country like an organization like the US FDA creates the framework, and then the framework that's released is then referred to by other authorities. So the Chinese CDE, this is the Chinese FDA, are refer back to the FDA's framework, as well as Taiwan. So there are a number of different countries, if you like, that kind of feed off of the FDA. And then the other example, which is interesting, that I wanted to quickly highlight, is the way Taiwan FDA are developing their guidelines. And they actually do a multi-stakeholder workshop. And we've been working with them for about 3 years, in addition to other industry members, to really see how this field is developing and how we can help shape this better as well. And then I think there were a number of sort of references to ISPOR, and this is really where we talk about the different partnerships. Actually, we're focusing on partnerships where Roche is engaged with different global organizations, both academic organizations as well as policy think tanks. And here there is Roche actually have a seat. So I sit on the Real World Evidence Transparency Initiative Steering Committee. And one of the things that we're trying to do, as was mentioned by Dr. Anya Schneel, is the fact that we're trying to improve the transparency in real world data analysis and reporting. And then there's the Duke Margolis Center, where we are also involved, and they bring out guidances that actually feed back into the FDA. So we do workshops with them in order to be able to bring out these guidances. And in addition to all this, we're also involved in the industry trade associations as well. I won't dwell on this because I know that there have been a number of references to the FDA. And then, of course, Dr. Anya Schneel mentioned all of the different European initiatives, so that I will skip over this slide as well. So now we come to the actual case studies, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this. Now at Roche, we have got a number of different case studies. We have got a large department, and so we work quite a lot on supporting all of our molecules. And this is a quick example of the types of studies we've done. So we've done studies that address the safety concerns using registry data. We've done studies that look at specific post-marketing commitments, for instance, for additional toxicology studies. And then we've also done external controls, which was also mentioned. But actually, when I was speaking to my colleagues, who were helping me organize the slides for this meeting, they specifically wanted me to highlight an example where real-world evidence was used to accelerate approval. And so this is actually an example from Amgen. And here we have a situation where we've got a very rare cancer. So this is metastatic Merkel cell carcinoma. And it's a very rare condition. It's a very aggressive skin cancer. And because it's rare, you can't run a randomized control trial. So the main package for this study was actually a single arm study. And the single arm study was generated. And but the feedback from the FDA was it's important to understand and put into context the patient response that they saw in the single arm study. So they wanted some contextual evidence in order to be able to see whether this new drug is actually better than what is available in the standard of care. So this is a US data source called McKesson, and they have access to electronic healthcare data. So they looked in their network and they found 2,000 medical records of patients treated with patients with Merkel cell carcinoma. And then they applied the inclusion-exclusion criteria of the trial into this database, and they found that actually there were about 200 patients that matched the trial criteria, and then out of that they were able to utilize 67 patients worth of data in order to be able to generate this comparative evidence. Now, what was interesting was that the data that they showed that the overall outcomes of these patients were actually pretty poor when they looked at the standard of care. So on the basis of that, the FDA actually approved this particular treatment, and the approval was done in 1 year from when the real world data study results were generated. And then I'll quickly, this is my last couple of slides. I'll quickly jump on to some examples where real world data has been used to support reimbursement. And this is a one for a molecule Tecentriq, and this is for non-small cell lung cancer patients. And this was actually a study that was done to specifically support NICE, NICE, which is the HTA body for the UK. And the study was done because the RCT that was part of the package for this particular drug, the standard of care that was used in the pivotal study did not match the standard of care that was used locally. So locally, they used to use docetaxel, and that wasn't what was available from in the data package. So we had to find a different source, and so we used Flatiron data in order to be able to support the survival extrapolations. And what was interesting was that the population that we got from Flatiron was a very recent population. So it wasn't historic data; it was data that actually was available within 2 months of when we wanted the study to deliver. So if you like, if I want the data today, I can look at data from July. So it's very recent data. And so what this showed was actually that the population that received docetaxel was actually pretty had better overall survival outcomes compared to the historic data that NICE were using to do their survival extrapolations. So NICE actually revised their survival extrapolations because the data that was available that we presented to them actually made them revise their assumptions. So just a few final thoughts here. Real world data is seen as a very rich source. It can be translated into meaningful evidence. It can, as I said, it can support the full product life cycle, and it can also be a door opener to innovative payment models. But again, to Professor Colbin's point, it's important to collaborate with a local stakeholder ecosystem so we're able to generate and use the right type of real world data and real world evidence. Thank you very much for listening.
Gracie, thank you very much for brilliant presentation. Once again, we got masterclass on presentation skill. Thank you very much.